I didn't have a lot of money left in my bank account. I had food and bills to pay. One day, I got an email. There are two things that really bother me. Assuming I don't somehow screw this up and they don't fire me. This is a screenshot from the animation that got me hired. Hi, my name is Genus. In my last video, I said this.
Since finishing up with school, I've been on the job search for the last 8 months. If you follow me on Twitter, good chance you don't, you've probably seen me lamenting about it to some extent. It's a rough time in the animation industry with the AI stuff and the massive layoffs, and I'm sure I would have struggled to find work even if it was booming. Even though I've made some cash on the side doing small commissions and a bit of teaching and tutoring gigs here and there, the money in my bank account is slowly getting lower. Fun times. But even with the gloom afoot, I'll keep working on improving my animation reel, trying to land work. Here's to hoping for the best.
Yeah, I had sent over 200 job applications across a bunch of different platforms. Some jobs I got close to getting, but no cigar. So in the meantime, while still actively applying to places, I was still practicing and trying to improve my demo reel. A prior mentor of mine had looked at my reel and he said,
"Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you."
No, what he had said is that I need to do a new acting shot. The ones on my reel are pretty old, and he didn't say this, but in my opinion, not very good. He said I had shown that I could do body mechanics, but I really need to show that I can do acting as well. So he suggested I do a close-up. Just shoulders and head, show that I can do subtle/sharp movements, can communicate with the eyes, and understand lip sync. So I did just that. I had spent nearly a month on that one acting shot. I had asked a bunch of animators I knew to give me notes to help make the shot better, and I feel like I learned a whole lot while doing so. Huge thanks to the people who gave me notes, including Shad Bradbury, Taylor Lanning, Jess, Insom, Sharp, Helena, Monica. I definitely gained a bunch of insight from all of the notes you guys gave me. Here's the final version of that shot.
And you're gonna tell me to ease up on the drumming, and I'm not gonna be able to do that. And really, I'm just gonna start to resent you for even asking me to stop drumming. Because I want to be great.
And you're not.
I want to be one of the greats.
I now had a new acting shot on my reel. I didn't have a lot of money left in my bank account. I had food and bills to pay for, and it seemed the only bit of income I was going to get this fall was teaching an animation class on Saturdays. Until one day, I got an email. I guess I had applied to them months prior while I was sending applications everywhere. This email was from Glitch Productions, asking if I would be willing to do an animation test. I agreed, and they just told me, use this rig, use this audio, you have 1 week, have fun. Alright, an acting shot, right after I had just spent a month working on an acting shot. It was time to see if I can apply everything I had learned from the previous shot into this animation test. So I stacked some boxes and put my phone on top of it, and I recorded some reference of myself trying to act out the shot. I did a whole bunch of takes, and I cut down to the ones I liked the most.
My name? My name is, oh God! Why can't I remember my name?
This was my first blocking pass of the shot.
My name? My name is, oh God! Why can't I remember my name?
The audio they gave me I recognized came from Digital Circus, so I tried my best to not go back and look at that same scene. I wanted to see what I could come up with on my own. My current workflow usually involves mainly focusing on getting the body down first and having some rough facial expressions in there. Some things I kept in mind while animating the shot was I wanted to lead with first the eyes, then the head, and then the body follows. So we see her eyes look at whoever's calling her name first, then her head starts moving, then her body. To try and loosen things up, I don't want everything starting and ending all at the same time, so I look for little moments that I could add some overlap. So maybe the fingers and the hand move last. And even though I told myself I didn't want to copy what Digital Circus had already done, I knew they had a pretty sort of wacky style, so I tried to push her expression, right? We got her eyes looking in 2 different directions, and we have her iris shrinking. When I work on things, I like to send little work in progress bits to my own personal Discord server that only has me in it. And you can see that there are a bunch of times where I'll notice something in the Playblast and give myself notes. And I usually send a lot of Playblasts. Another thing I try to incorporate, especially after that last acting shot, is trying to find squash and stretch, and not just the body, but trying to find it in the face. So around here in this first pass, you can see when her mouth closes, her brows also come down. There's a whole squash happening through her face. Another thing to keep in mind is that asymmetry is very nice to achieve. So we get this V shape with her mouth and eye mask. There are moments where I tried to include some overlap as well in the face, playing around with that idea of squash and stretch. So we see that her head goes up and then back down. And I tried to drag the eyebrows a bit and have them hit their down pose a few frames later than the head. Something I've often struggled with in the past is floatiness and contrast in timing. So in this blocking pass, I tried to have moments where she's not just moving slowly, but you have moments where she's moving fast. I especially tried to do it where her eyes are darting back and forth between her two hands. And you can lose a lot of that sharpness when going into a spline pass, so I needed to make sure when going into spline that I try and retain some of that sharpness. This ending here eventually got changed because you can see at the beginning when she responds to the person calling her name, she looks screen right, not directly into the camera. So for the ending, it was decided that she should keep looking in that direction. And after making that decision, I felt like her whole body movement for that didn't really work as well for me anymore. So I was playing around with some different ideas. One of those ideas was the idea that she's very frustrated with herself for not being able to remember her name. So she hits herself in the head trying to jog her memory.
Remember my name!
And even though this idea didn't make it to the final, you still see that I'm trying to find places for squash and stretch in the face. But yeah, it ended up looking really funny to see her just bonk herself in the head. What I eventually settled on was something a bit closer to the original, but some key differences. The biggest difference being that she doesn't get as close to the camera, and she now looks screen right. Another idea I was trying to incorporate in this is the idea of opposing motions. So we have her head moving down, but body parts like her hands and her shoulders move up in opposition to that. Hand moves up, head moves down. And then when the head starts moving up, the hands and arms move down. Doing that, we not only get opposing motions, but we also get squash and stretch. Here's where the squash would be, right? If you remember a bouncing ball, squashes and compresses, and then when she goes up, this would be the stretch. So we get compression, then expansion. And of course, those aren't the only things I'm thinking about, right? As an animator, you constantly want to try and incorporate your fundamentals. So, keeping track of your timing, your spacing, your arcs. We get a little bit of an arc with her nose here, right? As she slows down, the spacing gets smaller. And when I want her to move faster and sharper, the spacing gets bigger. This was the final version that I ended up submitting.
My name? My name is, oh God! Why can't I remember my name?
So instead of spending an entire month taking my time with an acting shot, this one, due to the nature of it being a test, was done in a week. Because in a production, you have a time limit. And you can see the changes that were made from the first version. Her whole body doesn't move when she turns her head. It's much more subtle, more natural. When someone calls to you, do you move your entire body? Sometimes, maybe, but for this, it was a lot more natural for her head to do most of the movement. To show that she's thinking, a good way to show a character's thinking is you give them eye darts. So you see her eyes darting around as she tries to remember her name. My approach to the mouth at the moment is trying to, as best I can, pose it as I would try and draw it. So we get this sort of shape. And what I had learned from the prior acting shot is that a lot of times in professional settings, in fact, most of the time, they move the teeth and try to hide things like this, where you see like the back of the back teeth. So as best I can, in a way that felt natural, I hid what you would usually see over here, right, this area of the teeth. And as I mentioned earlier, you could see I really tried to keep the sharp movements as she's darting her head in this segment. Another difference from the final version, from the initial version, is that I tucked in this arm here, in this pose, and that's for design purposes of trying to make a complex shaped side versus a simple side. It also helps with making her less symmetrical. Before, I had her arm sticking out something like this, right? If we go back to it, we get this shape. But instead, maybe I can simplify and get an asymmetrical shape. A simple side and a complex side. And that's the motivation for that change. I just want to take a moment to say thank you for all the support on my last video. It literally got 100 times more views than I thought it would. And so many of the comments were very kind, and so many of you talked about your own stories and journeys concerning animation. So I'm glad that the video resonated with so many people. For the people who have seen that video and are interested in the story of Ashes, don't worry, I am still working on it. The script is a work in progress. It's just now with a full-time job, it's a bit harder to work on it. And I'm also editing retrospective videos for my other channel that I run with Sharp FLA called 15/15. If you're interested in a bunch of shorts that were made in just 1 week from concept to completion, you should totally go check that out. All right, back to talking about the test. There are two things that really bother me in the final version. One being is that I sort of missed a small mouth movement. So she says, "My name is." Now, to make the N sound can be conveyed with a tongue movement, and she doesn't have that when she says name. She just stays in this pose. And I would have preferred if, as her mouth closes, you see her tongue briefly flick upward to show that she's making the N sound. But my biggest complaint about it was I wasn't quite happy with how I animated her hair. It was the last thing I did before submitting the test, so I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. I just feel it doesn't quite carry as much weight as I would like. And if possible, I would try to get more bends in there. So as it's falling back this way, right, it all kind of comes to stop at the same time. So I would maybe want a little bit more overshoot and just give it more time to really settle. Overall, the hair just settles really quickly into its resting position. And I think that's most prominent at the end. Part of the reason for that is something I had heard is the last thing that moves is the thing that catches the viewer's eye. And I didn't want the hair to be too distracting from her facial performance. So as part of my journey, I need to learn to properly tread the line between making natural flowing hair while at the same time not have it be too distracting. I had sent them the test, and 2 days later they asked for an interview. And I guess the interview went well, considering I'm now hired. I told them about my experience in animation, working as part of a team, and some of my personal projects, like the aforementioned 15/15. And they said I seemed really passionate about animation, which is something that contributed to me being hired. So yeah, I've been working at Glitch for about a month now. And, you know, outside of having less time for personal work, which is just a consequence of being employed in general, I've really enjoyed it so far. The show I'm working on has a really cool, unique style. Go check out the teaser for it. It's Gaslight District. And everyone I've met so far is really nice, funny, friendly, and very skilled at what they do. It's almost intimidating how good everyone is at what they do over here. I say almost intimidating, it is intimidating. It's honestly really relieving that I was able to find work, not only because it's a very turbulent time in the animation industry, but I had taken a bit of a non-traditional approach to my college education. I kind of forced my own curriculum, exclusively taking classes where I felt I would either create something or improve my skills as an animator/filmmaker. And that costed me actually getting a degree. I never graduated or got a diploma because I knowingly didn't take classes that the college wanted me to. I went to college to animate and make films. I wasn't there to take anything unrelated, so I guess I'm technically a dropout. After I was finished with regular college, I took a single course from Animation Mentor. My reel was good enough that they placed me in their advanced body mechanics class instead of taking their basics class. And in that advanced body mechanics class, my mentor was kind enough to let me attempt a really ambitious fight scene. I think that fight scene, being on my reel, also helped Glitch even consider me. And with that mentor's help, that fight scene ended up being good enough for Animation Mentor's student showcase. I'm mostly of the belief that a degree won't help me get a job in animation. I'm an artist, not a doctor. No, I think actually having the skills and showing that on a demo reel would be the thing to get me a job. And it seemed to work out for me. It feels really nice that my efforts paid off, but like I said in my last video, I couldn't have done it alone. I had a lot of support from friends, family, and mentors, and I can't thank them enough. Assuming I don't somehow screw this up, you'll hopefully see my name in the credits of some Glitch shows in the coming months. Now, just because I'm working doesn't mean I want to become complacent. I still want to make my own animated series called Ashes. If you're unfamiliar with it, check out my last video. Link should be in the description. Progress on it is going to slow down tremendously due to work, but I still plan on trying to do it. Wish me luck. Hopefully this video gave insight about how I got my first studio job in animation and some of the things I think about when approaching an acting shot. I hope you all have a nice day.